But I just think about, had I known, had I known those days were coming to an end, what I would have done differently, what pictures I would have taken. And we can't really do that to ourselves, right? It doesn't help anything to get frustrated with yourself over what you don't have. This is a huge reason why I'm doing the work that I am and creating the education around what I'm creating, in that if we are living our lives in a more intentional way, there's less room for this feeling of regret, in many senses of the word. And I feel really fortunate that I don't have regret. Help Me See is a podcast based in intention, purpose, and heart. Vulnerable, real conversations challenging the norms and empowering you to harness your intentional vision for your purposeful life. Around here, we're not about the small talk. We're unpacking all of the unnecessary crap that we've carried with us for far too long. Some of these episodes are solo style. I like to call them my little audio journal with my innermost thoughts that leave me thinking, am I the only one that feels like this? And then some super inspiring guests having conversations that I truly feel like are needed in today's world. Listen into a new episode every Wednesday and leave inspired by your everyday with the deep peace of knowing that you're not alone and have the innate power to make this life count. So today's episode is not going to be a fun one per se. So I caution you. It is today, the day that this drops, is the year to the day anniversary of the day we lost our sweet dog, Tyson. So I felt extremely compelled to have an episode of reflection on what I've learned. I want to talk about how this loss has really been a pretty extreme catalyst for this new phase of life that I'm in, and pretty much like a complete transformation of myself. I'm not offering any answers or messages that are meant to help anyone feel any sort of way over a loss. But I am having this outward reflection for myself, just to share my story, to share the story of what it means to take the power of your grief and turn it into something that is giving more than taking. And that's what I like to think of my grief for Tyson. It's something that helps me to keep giving. All right. Well, on to the show. So I know they say to make work from the scar and not from the wound. And that makes total sense, or at least speak. You're ready to talk about it if it's a scar rather than a wound. But I don't see, at least at this point, I don't see my feelings about losing my dog Tyson to ever become a scar. I think it's always going to feel fleshy. But I want to talk about it. I want to talk about it because it's been a year to the day. Well, right now it's the day before, but this is dropping tomorrow. So by the time you're listening to this, it'll be a year since we lost him very unexpectedly. And he was my first podcast episode. That's what it was about. Because he's a huge part of my why. He's a huge part of what is the catalyst for my I hate to even call it business, just my everything, my life, and what I'm working towards and for and why. It's still hard to go back and look at the pictures right before he passed, because most of them in those last few days were, just him being in there by happenstance for the most part. They weren't very purposeful and intentful. I mean, I give myself grace because I did have a newborn. Silas was only like a month or so old, and a toddler running around like crazy. But I just think about, had I known, had I known those days were coming to an end, what I would have done differently, what pictures I would have taken. And we can't really do that to ourselves, right? It doesn't help anything to get frustrated with yourself over what you don't have. But this is a huge reason why I'm doing the work that I am and creating the education around what I'm creating, in that if we are living our lives in a more intentional way, there's less room for this feeling of regret, in many senses of the word. And I feel really fortunate that I don't have regret with basically anything with him other than those last couple of days, because it happened so suddenly. I just didn't have, photos of him in a more intentional manner because we had just moved, we just had a baby, but like there was something about him that made me a person that I loved of myself. I was telling Ben the other night, we were talking about how it feels almost like dirty that he's not here, like gross, that feeling of just ickiness. And how we're both not ready for it to be a full year. I'm not ready to be in a year that he wasn't with us. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. This has got to be really annoying to listen to, this podcast format. But it's important. Well, it's important to me. I think it's important. I'm not ready to be in a year where he wasn't with us, a full year, because that feels like a very long time, even though it feels like just yesterday. But when we were talking about this, I told Ben that I miss him so deeply, but also in an unexpected way, I miss that version of myself, the version of myself that he brought out of me. I miss that. I was creating a module or a video for my course, and this video is dedicated to Tyson and about, basically how he's my proof of concept for this work that I'm so called to work on and present to the world. And I was listening to my annoying voice, talking to him in all of these home videos. I don't even recognize that person. I don't sound like that anymore to anyone. I don't sound like that when I'm talking to my kids. I don't sound like that with my new dog. That was reserved for him. And it's funny because I didn't know that. I didn't know that, and I didn't realize that until I was going back and looking at these old home videos. And this is just like the tip of the iceberg in terms of the power that is held in these photos and these home videos that we take of our lives. We know not what we do. We don't fully understand. We can't even begin to grasp how important it all is. And the way we feel about the photos that we take and the moments that we live now versus how we'll feel about them a year from now, 10 years from now, it's all constantly evolving and changing. And if we're mindful and intentional in seeing what's in front of us, we're way further away from the danger of missing it. So pretty much the only quote that's given me any sort of comfort during this experience of loss is the quote saying, "Grief is love persevering." I believe that was from that TV series WandaVision. I watched a little bit of it, but Ben mostly watched it. And that's what it feels like. Although it feels like something I kind of want to escape, I also don't, because I almost wear that pain with like a badge of honor, in his honor. The way in which he passed, which was literally fine one day and collapse the next day, and that was it. Like, no vet, no nothing, like in a matter of 5 seconds. And so that level of unexpected, that is what I speak to. This is what I talk about when I'm talking about abundance versus scarcity, and how elusive time is, and how something is so mundane until it's not. Something can be your everyday for so long until it's not. And sometimes it fades and we don't realize it, and we don't see it happening until we realize, oh, my son hasn't cried for me to comfort him in the middle of the night in a month. Maybe that's over. Or it could be something that stops abruptly in a second, like having my dog. The point is, this is life, and we don't know what we don't know. But the good news is, the encouraging, the empowering, the happy, the wonderful news is that all we have to do is live more, engage more with your life, and feel more of your life, and see more of your life. And it's hard. We have a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot to life. There's a lot of things pulling our attention in a million different directions. But it's my belief that these things that we keep in our back pockets, our phones that have a camera built into it, it could not be more convenient. I mean, let's be honest, these phones might as well be shoved up our asses. We have them all the time. So if we can take advantage of this superpower that we all just sit on every single day and use it as something to help us see more in the moment and keep us awake, then we will also have those gifts, those eternal gifts of the images that we took along the way to comfort us later when we do need it. I mentioned this in the lesson in my course, that I call Tyson my unintentional proof of concept, because he is the first major loss that I've experienced. And as I took his photo throughout the years, and as I loved on him and lived with him, for almost 8 years, I always felt this fear of him not being there. And it wasn't undercurrent, but that undercurrent made me live and love and hold him more fiercely and more urgently and more purposefully and more intentionally. So while I'm not encouraging this living with doom and gloom and fear hovering all around you, it's the acknowledgement, it's the being awake to the fact that this is impermanent. That needs to be something that you understand and don't forget in order to not miss out. You know, I'll revisit what I said in my first episode. Once we got back from taking him where he needed to go, I was just like frantically thinking about what was my last moment with him. And for a second, I was really freaked out because I couldn't remember. And I thought that that meant that I didn't have a moment with him. But then I remembered, of course, he was sleeping at the foot of the bed, or really just laying there because he was awake. And before I got out of bed, like I always did, I put my face into his and I snuggled him and I kissed his head and his ears and I told him, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you. And the comfort of knowing that even though I didn't know what was about to happen, I still had such a rich last morning with him. And it's because he taught me to live like that. And the gift that it is to go back and continue to learn from him, even though he's not here anymore, through the images and the home videos I took of him and just witnessing it in all the different ways. It's just a gift that will keep on giving. And it's my personal mission to make even more meaning out of his life, his short life here on Earth, and really let this be the driving force to help me continue having these conversations. If this is your first time listening to this podcast, I promise that it's not always like this. But listen, this is real talk, and is this really fucking important? This is not a dress rehearsal, you know? This is life, and shit happens, and beautiful shit is happening every single day. And I don't want to miss it. I want to see it, and I want you to see it too. So I'll wrap it up here and stop like sniffling all in your ear. You have a pup. I want you to give him or her a bunch of extra kisses today from me. Thank you for listening and for helping Tyson's legacy live on through hearing his story. And I look forward to continue to channel everything he's given me and give it back to all of you.
Tyson, do you have a lot of feelings? Yeah? What else? Do you wish you could go and your paw wasn't hurt? Yeah? Tyson, do you want to go outside? I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It's okay.